Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask you to follow us, like us, leave comments, maybe even support us on Patreon. All of that helps to keep us on the air. Today's guest is out of this world. Her name is Barbara With, and she's an international peace activist, an award-winning author, composer, and performer, a workshop facilitator, and she's authored 6 nonfiction books on metaphysics about her research as a psychic channel who works with a group called The Party, headed up by Albert Einstein. She's also the co-founder of Conflict Revolution, a revolutionary way to resolve conflicts of the psyche as a pathway to global peace, and based on the work from channeling Einstein. She's currently on a world peace tour, although she's not. I guess when I saw this, she was on a world peace tour because she's back. And she's looking for the participation of the willing to take part in a worldwide nonviolent action to end the age of war using conflict revolution to make peace within as a pathway to global peace. So I'm sure as we get into our discussion, we'll learn a lot more about that. So, Barbara, I'm going to turn the mic over to you to first tell us your personal story about your spiritual journey from childhood till now, and then we'll get into some questions, okay?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob, for having me on today. I appreciate the time. I began my journey actually as a musician. I started teaching myself to play piano when I was 5 or 6. Started writing music when I was 12. And I always say that the process of writing music at that age was a setup for me becoming a psychic channel. Because it's basically the same process. I would close my eyes and go into the nothing and listen for the music, and because it was already written, which is how I said it. And then I would write it. And that's kind of how I channel as well. So I was a musician full-time for 20 years, right out the gate of high school. And at the same time, I had a friend whose mother was a psychic. And I didn't actually go looking for a psychic, but when he said, you have to see what my mom does,
Yeah.
I went to see, and that's what she did. So I had readings with her for probably about 15 years. And when I began to spontaneously automatic write while I was typing a letter, I knew what it was because I'd been exposed to it, but I was still rather shocked that it was happening to me. And the words that were coming out were not my words. And when I asked, I was typing, "Who are you?" And they said, "We are sound." And as someone who grew up as a performer and a writer of music, that was perfectly okay with me. So that's kind of how I became a channel. And then in 1993, that was 1987. So in 1993, I got this idea, what if I channeled for a group of people? And what would these voices say? And I sort of considered myself like an antenna, right? I was picking up on your higher power, and I had a way to translate that. And I couldn't find anybody in my normal clientele. And then Teresa showed up at my door, and she sent 6 of her friends, and then she sent her best friend, Kim. And Kim and Teresa and I, long story short, formed what we call the psychic sorority. And we started to organize groups in our living room, and we would tape them and then transcribe them. And when Kim and Teresa said in a channeling session, "Who are you?" they said, "You can call us angels." And that was kind of a step up for me as an antenna. And I was not real comfortable with that. Not that who doesn't love angels, but it's like, what does that mean? And the three of us decided that because what was being channeled was so profound and so compassionate and was changing our lives so distinctly for the better, that we were okay with that. I think the Bible, they might have called it the fruits, right? It was the fruits that were telling of
Yeah.
it. So our first book, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, came out in 1997. And the gist of it was these angels told us that they had this theoretical idea that if humans would resolve their conflicts first within themselves, in this way they wanted to teach us, that the byproduct would be manifestation of peace in the environment around us. So, Einstein said you can't resolve the conflicts at the level that they're being created, right? So
Right.
this was
Yeah.
apparently a way to first resolve them here and then have the byproduct be world peace. And they needed people to test it on. So that was the three of us. And of course, we had our first fight and we used the process. It was all written in the book and had such a remarkable outcome of when we were at the table and I was pointing my finger at Kim and she was pointing her finger at me. And I said, wait a minute. We just channeled this. Let's go see what it says. And what I read was, if you're involved in a conflict emotionally, your part is within you. And that was fairly revolutionary to all of us. And I think to the world in general. We aren't taught how to deal with conflict in this way, much less in any constructive way for the most part. We kind of just learn as we go with, role models of our parents and whomever. So when we sat back down at the table and kind of had this spiritual moment where we all went, oh, wow. And I came back and said, well, here's what I can do better. And Kim came back and said, yeah, here's what I can do better. And it was a completely different outcome than I'd ever experienced. But more importantly, that night, I went to work. I was singing at a hotel in downtown Minneapolis, and there was a waitress there who really was very cold, but I didn't care. I don't care. I was there to sing and had been playing there for a couple of years. And I walked in and she could not get enough of me. Oh, Barbara, how are you tonight? Do you like Patti Smith? I've got some cassettes I'd like to give you. And I thought, this is so weird. But then I remembered what they said. When we resolve the conflicts here, quite naturally things manifest around us in ways that we could not achieve going directly at them. So that was my first very tactile lesson in what later became conflict revolution, which was the process that came out of all our work that I began to train in 1999. So that's kind of how all that got started. And then after our first book came out, my agent, my literary agent, got a call from a tabloid in London, kind of a metaphysical tabloid, who was looking for a interview with Princess Diana from beyond the grave on the 1-year anniversary. And I had never done such a thing. I knew that I could speak with people who had passed on because they would appear to me and then want me to get the message to their living relatives. I'd never thought of, well, maybe I could go to someone. And I was very, again, skeptical because a tabloid, really, what? And in the end, I thought, well, let's just see what happens. So I channeled the questions and the answers. I typed it and then printed it out and I read it and I just wept. It was so deep and so beautiful. And among the many things that she shared with us, her whole message was, if everyone in the world would do conflict revolution, we'd have world peace in a day, pretty much. So with that, my agent said, hey, maybe there's more famous dead people who want to talk. So we made this list, you know, Gandhi, Elvis, Mother Teresa, and I would go in my head, I'd imagine asking them, do you want to do this interview? And many of them said no. And the second person up was Nicole Brown Simpson. And it'd just been a year prior that OJ had been found not guilty. So that was a really interesting interview. But then we got to John F. Kennedy, which is also a timeless interview that really does reveal what we're all finding out now with everything coming out. But he said, this is not your idea. We are a party of 12 who are here in afterlife, and we're here to help you with world peace. And we'll tell you who is coming up. So put your list away. And Einstein wasn't even on the list. How sad are we that he wasn't on the list? And I had this image of the party of 12, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So they just come out and tell us. And when I channeled Einstein, now this is 1998, so I'd been channeling 11 years for many, many people. And when I sat down and I spoke that, it was the voice of all of my readings. It was the voice of every reading that I did. It was the voice of sound. And it was fairly, it took me about 3 years to really be comfortable with this, because it's crazy. It's crazy making. What do you mean? I'm channeling Einstein? Einstein was the angels? Einstein was sound? So, yeah, it took me a while to let that sink in. But meanwhile, I published the book, Party of 12, The Afterlife Interviews. And it came out in June of 2001. And then September 11th came. And that was really what made me say, you know what? The world needs this information. I have to have the courage to come out of the closet and say, I talked to Einstein and all these other people. Yeah. And so I did my first session with him and the party. And then in 2005, I thought, hey, it's the 100-year anniversary of E = MC squared. Let's do a little book with Einstein. What would he say? You know, I really had no preconceived ideas at all. And what ended up happening was he delivered to me a theoretical unified field theory, which is something scientists still don't have. And for your listeners, it means they're looking for the mathematics that can explain both the macrocosm of planets and the microcosm of molecules. And they still haven't quite found that uniformity in, it's getting very close, but he delivered it along with maps of human consciousness, and a very profound, to this day, one of the most profound things I've ever heard, which is how he defined compassion as the 5th fundamental force of the universe. That it's a force, that it's the creative intelligence that uses the other 4 fundamental forces to impel the creation of the physical world, the universe, one step at a time. And that the source of everything is in the center of the planet, and it's a black hole. Now, Bob, I'm not a scientist. I dropped out of science and math. I had no idea if this was just some cruel joke. And I said to him, I was like, you expect me to stand on a stage and tell a bunch of scientists that the source is but up until that time, the fruits had been so right on and so profound and never once wavered from being so compassionate. So I published that. And then in 2016, I did a very complete, the first book was Imagining Einstein. And the second book I called Einstein et al., complete with illustrations, all the maps, a complete description of this scientific process that he brought forth. And the crowning confirmation for me was last summer. I was selected to speak at the Science of Consciousness Conference in Barcelona, put on by the University of Arizona Tucson Astrophysicist Division. So this is a conference they've done for 30 years looking for the science of consciousness.
Yeah.
And it started out all the left-brainer scientists, right? And as the years went on, slowly the psychologists started coming and the spiritual people started coming, and the scientists began to realize they've only got a part of the answer.
Right.
So I happened to speak. It was one day short of the 70th anniversary of Einstein's actual last manifesto, which was read in London on July 9th, 1955, that basically said to the world leaders, find peaceful ways to resolve your conflicts because no one will survive World War III. And when I sat on that stage in Barcelona, one day short of the 70th anniversary, and I got to say to the group, the big crowd, people crammed in that room, to say that in 2005, Einstein wanted me to tell y'all that the source was in the center of the earth and it was a black hole. And 3 people leapt up. Yes, 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 it's a black hole. And I was like, I've been vindicated. So it was really a profound moment in all of that long story that just gave me a real peace of mind and a kind of a very humbled sense of what in the world my life has been. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Well, just for a moment, let me take you back to childhood. Were you raised in any particular faith tradition as a child?
I was raised, I think the church that we went to was called Evangelical United Brethren. So I don't know exactly where that sect or that section fits into Christianity.
Yeah.
But I quit the church early on.
Yeah. Okay. And how did your parents respond to some of the capabilities that you showed, or did you kind of keep them in the closet until you moved out of the house, or how did that work out in the family situation?
Well, I was raised in a very traumatic situation. There was a lot of abuse that went on. My father left when I was probably 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. And my musical talents, which began to really flourish after he left, I started writing music mostly from the pain, just to cope with the pain.
Yeah.
And my mother was working 60-hour weeks. And so there wasn't really a lot of parental guidance. My mother was always super supportive of my music. As far as my psychic ability, my father and my mother were extremely psychically connected. Both of them had what I might call informal psychic abilities. My mother knew when my father had been shot down over Burma, and my father knew things. So they knew what that was. But honestly, when I gave my mom the book Party of 12, she admitted that she didn't really believe it.
Oh.
She didn't really believe that I was talking to dead people.
Okay. So you made all that up.
Apparently I did. Well, how brilliant am I? I'm just great. Either way, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And siblings? Any siblings?
I have 3 sisters.
Okay. And how do they feel about all this stuff that you're into?
Well, my sister Chris and she started channeling at the same time I did.
Oh, okay.
She didn't keep it up, but she was also doing that. So she was there. My sister Sandy was very much a big advocate. She did all my transcriptions back in the day before AI
Mm,
and attended a lot of my stuff. And my older sister was kind of neither here nor there.
yeah. So your music, what are we talking? Punk rock or what kind of music were you writing and channeling and singing, right? You were a singer? And
Yes.
were you playing an instrument at the same time?
Yes. I started out as a pianist and then I expanded into guitar and production, produced my own material.
Mhm.
I know I used to say that my musical parents were Joni Mitchell and Bruce Springsteen. That was the
Okay.
era that I started writing was really this late 60s and the singer-songwriter and then as it turned out through my career, I did all kinds of stuff. I didn't ever do punk rock, but I wrote jazz, I wrote some blues, I wrote some country. I kind of had a wide variety of stuff, and it was just whatever came out of me. I never sat down to think, "Hey, I should write a song about this." It was just like, "Oh, there's a song coming out.
Yeah.
Let's see what this one is."
So when that happened, did you did you keep all of this as your original material and just for you, or did you sell some of these songs and have other people sing some of them?
I haven't ever sold anything, but I did play very solidly for many, many, many years and wrote many, many, many songs.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I was on your website and I just noticed that that some people made comments. Oh, I saw you sing, in this year in this venue and really enjoyed it. And so I
yeah, that's
guess,
always fun.
yeah. So are you Barbara Lee with as a singer? Is that the stage name you use?
Well, not really. There came a point somewhere along the way. There came a point where either my mother or my father said, "Use your middle name because that'll make you bigger and famous, more famous." So I think there was a period of time where I used Barbara Lee with, and then it was just like, it's not. It's just Barbara
No.
with, you know.
Okay. I was just curious about that because I saw that as your stage name. All right. So you are uh, working to recruit folks to work with the conflict resolution process. So, and you've been doing that for a while. So how's that going? And what size group do you have? And are you getting feedback from people participating in this? And what's that feedback look like?
Well, actually, just to jump back to the world tour part, because
Okay.
this fits in with conflict resolution, is that I've been teaching and training conflict resolution around the world for since 1999. And in 2023, with the world getting crazier and crazier, I thought, you know what? I'm going to leave behind all my little things that I do, and I'm going to devote myself to this work. And I'm on July 9th, 2023, I officially kicked off what I called my world tour, which is me dedicating the rest of my life, however long that will be, knock on wood, to getting the word out about this process, this journey and conflict revolution.
Yeah.
And I don't have a official group that I teach. It's when I do readings, the principles are in the readings as well. Uh, I I think the last group I did was right before October 7th, whatever day that was, whatever year that was that Israel was attacked.
Hmm.
I was contacted by a woman in Israel who was at their wits' end. Her and her group were at their wits' end. They knew
Yeah.
there was something coming, and could we do this? So I had about 25 Israelis doing this process. And the calling for the participation of the willing is about opening up people's minds to this idea that if we first resolve it here
Mm-hmm.
before we go into the arena, we may not even have to go into the arena. We may be able to change the arena without having to actually confront. And that is what happens consistently, uh, predictably to people who actually become willing, because you have to be willing. It's,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who go, well, you're blaming the victim and no, this, and I'm going to put, and so that's okay. That's their thing. But when you're willing to go, hey, let's do a thought experiment like Einstein might have, let's actually see if this works. Then you get what I often say is kind of the immediate byproduct when you walk yourself through the process or have me walk you through it and have this aha moment about what is really the root of this conflict. And we take a conflict and you pick one, doesn't matter which one, they're all going to the same place. And when people walk through it, revolve the conflict, get to the root, and then we teach them how to process that, process your emotion, process your intellect, what's going on in your thoughts, find your intuition and listen to it and align to compassion, as we say. There is, I would say, probably 100% of the time, there is something that shows up in the environment that was bigger than anything that person could have gone at in that arena. And it's mind-boggling to me how consistently it works. But the trick is to find the willing, to find the people who are willing to actually do it. Because I'm telling you, Bob, and you're in the spiritual field. We understand a lot. Look at all those books behind you. They're probably about every aspect of spiritual understanding that we can come by. It's one thing to understand it, and it's another thing to do it.
Right.
And conflict resolution is a rigorous do it, because and you probably have heard this is not, brain surgery or new to me, is that what you're triggered by in other people is a sign of something that's going on within you. That's a very simple thing
Right.
to understand spiritually. But how many people will stop and go, okay, what is that? Okay, I see that in her. Let's revolve it around here to me. What is it in me? That is one of the most difficult processes that a human can do,
Right.
but also the most effective.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a tough one because it's one thing to be able to identify it. I mean, you need that first step. you you need to be able to say, "Oh, that triggered me." What's that say about me? Not what's it say about the person who triggered me, but what's it say about me? And then to go through a process to figure out what it says about you. uh, yeah, that's a multi-part process that often people can get to the first step, but then they don't take it any further.
Well, and what's beautiful about this is that when you're willing to take it all the way, and then you have your aha moment and you have this incredible gift, like this unbelievable. Here's a small example. I was in Norway doing a workshop, and this woman, she was Barbados. She was from Barbados, married to a Norwegian. And her conflict she brought to the workshop was, my mother-in-law hates me. She wants me deported.
Uh,
25 years. She's lived with this idea that her mother-in-law wanted her deported. And when she got to the process, now that you can leave that there if you want, but when you
Mhm.
take it in, and she looked at me halfway through and she goes, "You know where this is headed." I said, "Yeah, I do, but not because I'm a like big psychic, but because it's a formula."
Yeah.
And her eyes welled up with tears and she said, "I'm homesick. I haven't been home in years to Barbados." I
Mhm.
said, "Judy, why don't you go?" "Well, I've got the kids and my husband." Well, she was married to a millionaire. He was a very, very wealthy businessman. I said, "How old are your kids?" I'm thinking, 6 months and whatever. 14 and 17.
Yeah.
So somewhere in her head, she had some kind of cultural constraint that wouldn't allow her to go back home. And then she had to make up these excuses. Well, I have the kids and then, oh, my mother. And she came back the next day and she said, "Barbara, 25 years of my relationship to my mother-in-law, I had to reevaluate." And shortly after that, she started going back to Barbados on a regular basis, bringing her family with her, and her relationship with her mother-in-law completely transformed. So when you get that gift,
Yeah.
that's the hook. That's what makes you the next time you get triggered and you're going, and I do this, I've been doing this since 1999. And I'm like, "Ugh, I'm not like her. I'm not." Okay, calm down, take a breath. Let's go in, let's find it because you're going to have this aha reward.
Yeah. So how about your psychic sorority? Uh, are you still doing things together?
We don't do things together. We did a lot together, and we got to a point where I went off on my direction. And Kim, she's a lover of Jesus and the Bible. And she wrote a book called Second Coming, Awakening the Christ Within, based on all of our work, then
Mhm.
interpreting the Bible through the lens of conflict revolution and the angels.
Yeah.
And Teresa, uh, I joke and say she's living in an undisclosed bunker in an unnamed part of the country because she took everything and she was the head of HR of a law firm for many, many, many years. And she said, "I use it every day. I use it with all the people, of all the human resources I had." And then she retired and she's with her grandkids and she did her part. So
Yeah.
that's what happened.
Uh-huh. Okay. I'm gonna go back to a comment that you made, and it's that the fourth major force is compassion. And it's not the first time I've heard that, but most of the time, what I hear is that it's love. So, I mean, I'm curious, I guess, about the difference between looking at that force as love and looking at that force as compassion. And you, I don't know, have you thought about that? Do you have any
Oh,
commentary on
yes.
that?
No,
Okay.
of course. So when you take the word compassion and you think about, this is Einstein telling us that compassion is what he calls the fifth fundamental force.
Okay.
You have to suspend your idea of the sort of feely, touchy love, empathy, and look at it from a scientific point of view. And by doing that, you take the root of the word compass is compass,
Mm,
compassion, compass. And what he says is compassion is a force that, first of all, the one thing it does is like a compass that draws circles. You put it,
yeah.
I guess we don't use that much anymore, but put it on the table and it draws a circle.
Okay, so not a compass north, east, south, and west,
Well,
but
we'll
a
get to that
compass
one too.
drawing. Okay.
The first one is the compass drawing. And what he said was compassion is basically the God force. It impels energy to step out of nothing and into everything and create a, electromagnetic membrane domain, a particle, basically, that's a circle that surrounds all of the mathematics that are going to be your life. So everything as we sit here, the books, the microphone, everything
Yeah.
has a root, and this is now in the center of the earth, which is a black hole. And so compassion, that's the first thing it does. It impels energy to create this circular membrane domain. Then, like the other compass you mentioned, which is if you look at a compass and you're pointing to true north, it's 0 degrees on the compass, 360 degrees, 0 degrees. So it aligns all of these compilations of consciousness to true north. So we're all on the same map. So we all have the same physical experience. Plus, we are born basically in the earth. And the third thing he says is more like what you're talking about. It's the innate sense that we are all one being. That's where that empathy comes from. That's where, I can't hurt you without hurting me.
Yeah.
It imbues all of our compilations of consciousness, he calls them, with that innate sense. So that's how he's trying to make it more into a scientific, quantifiable definition rather than just the ambiguous but important definition
Yeah.
of love.
Okay. Well, you've solved the unsolvable problem, uh, or at least channeled the solution,
Exactly.
because the quantum physicists have been sitting around pondering this and trying to figure out, okay, it's still a mystery, and will we ever get to the answer to this? And so we've got the paradox of the wave and the particle, and how do we weave string theory into this and make all
All in
this
there.
work?
It's all in there. Everything. It's brilliant. And after I presented last summer at Barcelona, one scientist I kind of keep my ear to is Nassim Haramein. He's been working on a unified field theory for a long time. And I started to hear, not just from him, but Brian Greene, who is also a string theorist, that, yeah, we can be inside a black hole. Guess what? We can be inside a black hole. It's like, all right, you didn't even have to hear me say it to you.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh, that's so exciting. And this has been around, I'm trying to remember when you published that.
Imagining Einstein, 2007.
So this has been around a while.
Yeah. Well, now it's catching on.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just reading a book, and interviewed the author, and it's really about Christ in a quantum age, and then trying to merge, quantum physics with spirituality, and I think he does an excellent job, but he hasn't read your book because he still leaves these questions up in the air. And
I know. It's tough to be me, man, with all
it's,
these answers that, who am I? I'm just the channel.
yeah, yeah,
But I did research conflict revolution on my own life to enormous success. So, and that was Einstein's theory, his his unified field theory, everything from Imagining Einstein was his theory about why conflict revolution works. Why technically when you change it here, it has to project here differently.
yeah. Oh, I'm I'm speechless.
No, I know, right? It's crazy.
I don't know, Barbara. It's just amazing. Uh,
I can
it,
hear your brain going tick tick
well, it must be fun being you,
tick.
you know?
It definitely is fun being me.
Yeah.
That I will say.
I mean, that's the other thing I've heard a lot is one reason why we're here is to have fun.
Oh
So
gosh.
so really enjoy it, while you're here. Yeah. Okay. So, Mad Island Communications. How did that come about, and what's that about?
Well, I live on an island called Madeline Island.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah. And when I first found Madeline Island in 1979, uh, shortly after that, I created a music publishing company. It started out as a music publishing company, Mad Island Music. And then when I started writing books, I expanded it to Mad Island Communications.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. I was
Yeah, it's not that I'm pissed off all the time.
just wondering where that came from. So this party that you've been talking with, is that still going on?
Oh gosh, it's only gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and now
I mean, it's no
it's
longer
massive.
12. Is
Yeah.
that
No, yeah, it's it's just huge. And every now and again through the years as it's expanded, and not just with people who I personally know who have passed on who end up there, but um last winter I was with an associate of mine in Georgia, and um Carl Jung showed up.
mm,
Now, I know very little. Like I said, I never went to college. I didn't study anything like that. And but my associate had. She was deeply, deeply a student of Jung.
hmm
And so we did a session with Jung, and I at some point I asked, because in the party of 12 was Sigmund Freud.
okay.
And if you know anything about the real history behind Freud and Jung, that
hmm
Jung was a student of Freud, and then they had a really deep split.
Yeah.
And I think it was because Freud was going down a path that you shouldn't have gone down.
hmm
And so in the channeling session, we asked Jung, why were you kind of off to the sidelines in the party of 12? And why did Freud get that seat?
Yeah.
And if you know anything about Jung, he has this 12-point aspect of the psyche that he's developed. So 12, right? So
hmm
that's what he said. He said that we were creating a group that was each representative of those 12 parts of my theory. Plus, Freud had some splaining to do. He needed to fess up and confess that what he put forth was not exactly correct. And at the
Yeah.
time I did the interview with Freud, I knew nothing about any of this. And as I go back and read it, and then I went back and read the interview after we did Jung, and I thought, and now that I know what I know about Freud,
Yeah.
it was like, holy smokes, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, Freud's subjects and his focus was was on pathologies and issues and problems. Uh, and Jung wanted to be more holistic and look at the whole person, and he had a much broader perspective. Uh,
Well, I think Freud had a little darker side to him too.
oh yeah,
Yeah. That's this research I've done and thought as I've researched that and thought, ooh, okay, that makes sense then. He's
yeah,
got some planning to do.
yeah. Well, I I'm curious, and I know I didn't set this up with you in advance. Is there a way to demonstrate your process of connection? And is it a connection that's always initiated by you, or is this connection initiated by others, and then you just are open to it?
Well, I decide ultimately what what I do.
Okay. So uh, there aren't voices tapping on the shoulder saying, "Let me in. I need to get this out and this communicated." Uh, but it's more you sitting down and saying, "Okay, I've got pen and paper. Whoever wants to come through, come on through."
It started out, like you said, it started out with a lot of voices and a lot of, I wouldn't say demands,
Uh-huh.
but very persuasive, consistent pressure to get the message out. And I had to learn through the years that my life is my life and y'all don't get to dictate when and who and what I am in service to you for, people.
Yeah,
And so, but now, like when I'm ready to channel, it's pretty accessible right there. And people are like, well, is it Einstein? Is it the party? What does that mean? It's like, it's a collective voice of compassion that has been molded and forged by this experience that we've shared in this past hour of all my experiences. And it's pretty seamless to where I don't have to do a lot. I don't like to be performative about it.
yeah.
I don't when people like, "Well, show us, prove it." It's like I'm kind of like, uh, but it's pretty accessible.
Yeah. So have you done it in a performance manner? Uh, or I guess as the example that you gave of the Israelis, that would have been, I guess, in a performance manner, right? In a
Well,
group
not
that
really. That was conflict resolution. That was an actual class. We didn't do any channeling with that.
okay. But have you done it as a performance then?
Have I did a big event in 2007 called the Quantum Leap, where I channeled and got invited all over the world for many years.
Mhm.
Uh, I was just asked if I wanted to be a part of a radio show in New York where I would channel famous dead people.
Yeah.
And I just frankly felt at this point in my life that that was too performative. It's like,
Yeah.
it's entertainment, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, but this gift is so profound to me. And I guess I'm the gatekeeper. So I get
Right.
to do what feels like, is somebody trying to prove that I'm this or that? Or, what if we get this famous person that this person actually knew and now they want to, it's like, I want it to be about world peace. I want it to be about healing. I don't want it to be about
Yeah.
performing so that people are, I call it parlor tricks, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I know, I live close enough to Lilydale, New York that I've been up there a few times, and, that's my experience with channelers, other than on the show, uh, and that's typically a performance in a way, uh, but really helping people at the same time. Uh, the Spiritualist Church, uh is a place where people feel that they can have those communications. and nobody charges money for that. It's seen as a spiritual activity, and it being important to a person to have messages from a loved one. So those are kind of my touch points with channelers.
Well, and my church is, we're not officially a spiritualists anymore, but it started, that was our history, but we became more of an interfaith community. So I do channel at church.
Okay.
But the difference is, for those people who channel, because I've been to spiritualist churches too, where, your grandpa, he used to wear socks with, snowmen on them, and he says hi. But the channeling I do is more about inspiring people in general to find this inner peace
Yeah.
as a way to promote, uh, kind of more altruistic rather than just a personal message.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. You have found a church home where you're comfortable.
Yes, for many, many years. It was very interesting. Our book had just come out, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, Talking with the Angels. And we lived in Minneapolis, the three of us, and we're going up to Duluth, which is a town about 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis, for a book signing I'd booked at a Barnes and Noble. And we were laughing about, there's no one going to come to this. We're just nobody. Nobody's going to come. And there were like 35 people waiting for us.
Yeah.
And they brought us over to the Spiritualist Church, and I've been with them ever since, from 97.
That's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we circled around to that point before we had to wrap up here. So we are close to our final words, and if you watched a couple of episodes, you know that at the end of each episode, I invite the guests to leave a few words of wisdom with the audience. So this is your chance with this particular audience to lay it on them.
All right, I'm going to do the conflict revolution elevator speech. Okay?
Sounds
here's how
good
you
to
do
me.
conflict. Okay, here's how you do it. When you wake up in the morning after your prayer of gratitude, there's four parts. You want to be the witness. So you're going to watch yourself all day. What you're looking for: emotion, solar plexus; intuition, heart; intellect, head. And when we align to compassion, emotion flows through us, all of it, not just the nice parts. And that informs our intuition, which is always going to be telling us the next most advantageous step for the good of the whole system. That's that third piece of compassion. And then it's going to get up into the intellect, where your ego and free will exists. And you've been given the power to say no to God, basically.
Yeah.
So if intuition says rest, your intellect can say, I can't rest. I've got a million things to do. And then make the decision not to rest. And that throws off the system. And that, Einstein will tell you, is the root of every conflict that manifests in the world, is the intellect ignoring the voice of God from within. So if I tell you one thing, it would be to process emotion through your breath, not your thinking. Breathe it through and let it move and flow. And then when you get into the intellect, because we all get obsessive, right? Well, she's so disrespectful. We get these loops.
Yeah.
Revolve them back in. Use that witness. Now I'm going to watch. Where am I being disrespectful? To myself, to other people? And once you start to look for it and you find it and you correct it, is when you really, truly, not just change your life, but then impact the world in this way that we've been talking about.
Wonderful words. So, audience, as always, take what you've heard, integrate into your life that which resonates with you, and put the rest on the shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.